Stories like crazy, because everyone has mental health, and everyone has a story, and sometimes they're crazy. Join Lori Lane Murphy and me, Adrianna Prosser, as we talk about dealing with, struggling with, and managing mental health with storytellers who want to share their true life story. Get in the conversation with us and talk to us on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe on SoundCloud and iTunes. Now, let's smash some stigma. Today on the podcast, we're going to get to know Lori Lane Murphy, one of the co-hosts here on Stories Like Crazy. In fact, it's thanks to her that we have this podcast, because it was her idea to smash stigma over a podcast, sharing stories, true life stories of people who live, struggle, and deal with mental illness. Here, let's hear her story. So, here we are, and let's get to know us, first of all.
Cool.
Very cool. I just have to warn our podcast listeners that I have a very sad little puppy in a head cone, in the cone of shame. The cone of silence. Well, not silence, because he's not silent at all.
He's mad. He's pissed.
He's super pissed, and he's just sitting here crying. So if there is some doggy cries, he has been moved by Lori's story.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly what it is. Because we actually record this podcast in my living room here in Toronto. And there's the bells because he wants to go outside. But no, he's not going outside. He's just a little curmudgeonly little dachshund. I'll post a picture. But enough of that. I want to introduce Lori Lane Murphy, and she is one of the are we co-hosts? We're hosts. It's a thing.
We're co-hosts, co-producers, co-founders.
We're
co-doers.
We're co.
We're co.
We're co. We're totally co.
Oh, that was not co.
That happened.
It did happen. Oh my god.
We're gonna need like a secret handshake or something.
I totally think so. Right.
Which you will never see because this is a podcast.
Lucky for you.
So Lori.
Yeah.
Tell us a story that's crazy.
Okay. Well, let me just go into the, resources or recesses of my mind. And what I always think about first when I'm sharing is I think about my childhood, because growing up in the 70s, in my opinion, was the best time to be a kid. Because we could go outside and not report back, and we could, ride our bikes without a helmet. We could sit in the car, not in a car seat, and not wear a seatbelt. We had all kinds of cartoons. We had the best comedy. We had Carol Burnett. We had everything Mel Brooks. We had SCTV. We had Young Frankenstein. And those in my age group, which would be the over 40 to be generous, and I had a dad that was super involved in all of that, and he made my brother and I notice comedy. In fact, my childhood was basically built through the lens of comedy, and my dad was kind of larger than life. He filled a room. He was always laughing, and he was always with us, even if he wasn't saying too much. And I didn't know at that time, through all the laughing and all the goofing around and the horseplay and the camping trips and any other great kid thing you could think of, that a lot of those times my dad was horribly, horribly depressed. And I talk a lot about a mask, and in the 70s we didn't talk about mental illness, let alone wearing a mask to cover your mental illness. But as a child, I didn't know why my dad was sad sometimes. And that was how I simplified it as a small child. Why is daddy crying? Why is daddy sad? Why isn't daddy playing with me? And my mom used to say, Dad's going to be fine. You just have to go play by yourself for a while. And it was my life's mission to make my dad laugh. So if my dad was sad, I didn't care if it was near impossible. I would stand on my head. I would do funny voices. I would tickle him. I would do anything I could just to see him laugh. And God, he tried. And he would laugh, cry sometimes along with me. And that was good for me as a child to see that. Of course, growing up and getting later on into my teens, I started to understand a little bit more what depression was. I didn't know that that's what it was called. I just know that I felt really dark at times, and I felt, and those of our listeners that know about depression know that sadness is probably 5% of it. There's numbness is probably 70% of it. And for a spunky teenage kid, I didn't know what that was all about. But my parents used to say, you're fine. It's okay. It's just a phase. It's just a phase. It's just a phase. So I found ways to deal with that kind of pain, and I self-medicated and so on, like unfortunately a lot of people do. And then finally I learned what it was called, and I learned kind of through the back door. My dad was really sick this one particular time, and my mom was going to be working. My brother was away at university, and my dad needed to go to Centenary Hospital for shock treatments. And of course, I didn't know what that was, and why on earth would someone need something called a shock treatment? And right away, my head went to cartoons. And like sort of, bzzz, I'm picturing like my dad's hair standing on end. I'm picturing all kinds of weird cartoony images. And taking him there and seeing sort of my larger than life, happy-hearted dad go through the hospital doors. He didn't want me to come with him. He would go to the 10th floor, which was the mental health ward, the psychiatric ward, it was called at that time. And I would go and do something for a couple of hours and then come back, and I would go into the hospital lobby and help him out to the car. And he would immediately fall asleep. And when we got home, and I was about 19 or so at the time, I knew in my head that me dancing around and making funny voices and faces, I knew that wasn't necessarily going to help my dad. But as we walked into the house and I kind of led him up the stairs and we went into the living room, and I immediately said, after I took his coat off him, do you want to watch cartoons? Do you want to watch, let's watch something funny. Let's watch George Carlin at Carnegie Hall. We had the tape on VCR, in our VCR, and that's what I wanted to do. And you know, now as an adult looking back, I'm thinking, my God, the poor man, the thing that he probably wanted to do more than anything was disappear to his room and sleep it off. Mm-hmm. But he sat with me. And we watched George Carlin at Carnegie Hall. And I laughed my fool head off, and I kept elbowing my dad, and he would smile, and he was there. And that was something that, well, clearly, if I'm talking about it all these years later, has affected me in managing my own illness and how I manage that illness with the people closest to me, with my own son. I have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, which is a fairly late diagnosis for me. 30 years ago, I was diagnosed with depression. And as it turns out, for the past 30 years, I've been on the wrong medication.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So this has been, over the last 6 months, a little bit of a trial to get things right. But the learning that has happened through this, by talking about it, by doing projects like Stories Like Crazy, is, you know, you're able to kind of finally put into words a lot of the emotions that you didn't understand. For years and years and years, I don't understand this emotion. What is this? It's not happy, it's not sad, it's not mad, it's not glad. Or sometimes it's so happy I'm going to explode. Or sometimes it's so down I can't ever get up again and back again. It's like a slingshot, back and forth and back and forth. So now being able to understand a bit more about this illness and what it can do, having the proper medication, understanding what my limitations are, understanding the signs of the symptoms if they're starting to get unmanageable. Those are the kinds of things that I've learned at this stage in my life. And so I could look back and say, damn it, I wasted so much time being unwell. But the years are gone. My dad is gone. And I would rather take from those years all of the amazing things that I did accomplish while I was ill. Yeah. And people can do that. And I think that that's going to be, at least for me, and I'm not sure for you, Adri, but I want that more than anything. My why would I do this, is because I want people to understand that they can accomplish things even on their darkest day. They can do things. You can be a contributing member of society and have bipolar disorder, have schizophrenia, have a major depressive episode, have such high anxiety that you can barely stay in your own skin some days. When we learn how to manage it and we understand rather than fight what's happening in our bodies and in our brains, we work with it. And this is the first time in 49 years I'm learning to work with something that I used to hate. Do I love my mental illness? Well, not necessarily, but I know no different. And I have contributed to society. And for me, if anyone can take away, even if you don't have an actual mental illness, be able to say, I'm just as valid as the person beside me who has no diagnosis. And that's what it's all about. And you wouldn't persecute somebody for having diabetes. It's time to stop that kind of personal persecution for mental illness, because I'm just me, and that just happens to be, I'm devastatingly attractive is one part of me, and bipolar is another part of me. There's all kinds of parts.
It just makes up you.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. So that's why I do this.
I like it.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
And I wanted to just say that I really liked how you were saying that I am valid.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I hear a lot, and something that resonated with me when I was going through my situational depression, is hearing from others, because it's sometimes hard to validate oneself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the goal, that's the dream.
Yes.
Is for you to wake up and look in the mirror and be like, yes,
you
right?
got this.
You
exactly.
got, and just be like, yeah, I am my own cheerleader.
Yep.
But it helps to hear from outside sources the word worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that you are worthy, and that you can insert whatever line is after that. Like, you are worthy of love.
Yes.
You are worthy, of that promotion. You are worthy of friendship. You are worthy of, safety. And like, it's just like, insert that word there. And I feel like that's what I'm hearing from you, is like this validation. Is that the same thing? Or?
Yeah, no, I think it's exactly right. Because if I looking back, I wanted to be valid and worthy of professional success. Mm-hmm. I have been very blessed in my life with love. I have been very supported, and that is, something that I wish for everyone, but I had that, and I was raised with that, and I give that freely to others. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was more about the worthiness of the contributions I could make. And do I make any contributions? Or am I just kind of like the court jester who is just leaving half-finished projects wherever I go? And part of that is what we talked about earlier, is not really understanding what's going on with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, and I'll call them mistakes, missteps. We make missteps along the way, or we take a different turn because, I don't know, maybe we're afraid, what's really going on, and maybe I'll find out something that I can't fix. But how do I work with it? And I think the idea of being a worthwhile human being, you are human, you are here, you have a voice, you have every right to this life. Absolutely every right to this life. And that is, something that I feel very passionately about. I am no better than anybody else. No one is superior. We often feel that way sometimes, but I agree with you. I think it's worthiness, validity, all of that.
I like it a lot. I like the use of misstep.
Yeah.
Because there's that, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or, forward momentum, and like all of those catchphrases and things like that. But I don't know if I've ever heard mistake, misstep, because that really is what a mistake is. It's just a step in the wrong direction, and then you just find your way back.
That's it. And you can pause. You can stop walking and inhale and look around you and assess, because I can tell you from personal experience, was a bulldozer. And if I didn't like what I did, mistake, misstep, I pretended it didn't happen. So it kind of like old Etch-a-Sketch, if you know what those are, Adrian.
Man. Oh, I do.
It's
totally
like
do.
shake it
Yeah.
and start over again. So I refused to learn. So of course you're bound to repeat.
Yeah.
And now you say, okay, this is not a race. You know, I don't have to. And I think comparison is what gets us all. You know, how come I'm not, I'm 49 years old. Why do I live in the house that I live in? Why don't I have more money? Why don't I have to, oh my God. And we don't see what's in front of us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, you don't see the moments. Like the moment we're having right now is awesome. Listeners, it is. You got to spend, I'm just going to tell you right now, you have to find Adrian, come and sit in your living room.
Pretty cool living room, I'm going to say.
You will be a better person for it.
I like it a lot. I like the pause. I might quote Hamilton the musical a couple times, but it makes me think of Aaron Burr's song where he's not standing still. He's lying in wait.
Yes.
Or that, you have to you have to run back to get a running charge forward. Like those kinds of things, right?
Yes, that speaks to me.
Yeah.
It really does. Because like you say, I mean, the fact of the matter is we are a society who loves catchphrases.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
So instead of fighting it, let's make our own.
I like it.
And they'll become part of the mental wellness vernacular. I don't know. But I don't think you can be fully whole and successful in any way that you see fit until you reflect on what's going on with you. And don't let anyone else tell you what's going on with you. Your doctor can diagnose you, but how is that impacting you? And we have often well-meaning friends and co-workers and whomever that want to tell you how you should be taking care of yourself.
And I think that it's always nice to receive that. Pull a Robert Downey Jr. where it's just like, and smile, and then just do what you were going to do anyway. Yeah. It's one of my favorite quotes from him and from anybody, really.
Yes.
And just understand that those critiques and those little catchphrases that people throw at you are coming from a place of love.
Of course they are.
Because a lot of times we don't know what to say, we don't know what to do, and even those of us living with these issues, we don't know either.
Yeah.
But it's a grace that I myself have a lot of trouble with to receive.
Really, Adrian? Really?
And just smile and just nod, and not fire back with my redheaded temper. But that's another story. I really enjoy all of that perspective of how you saw how your dad went through it. And then you yourself are going through something as well, similar and akin. Did that make you closer to him in memory? Like, do you find that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was close to my dad anyway.
Yeah.
He was my kindred spirit anyway. And what we sort of have learned once my bipolar disorder was diagnosed correctly, we look back and pretty much see that my dad was likely as well. It's a strongly genetic link or component with bipolar disorder. And my mother, with living with him from the time she was 15 when they started dating, all the way up until he passed away in 2005 from cancer, she is very thoughtful when we talk about it. And you can just see her rifling through the annals of her brain and seeing memories of my father and thinking, that was it. That was completely it. The things that he was doing, the choices that he was making, and so on. So I feel like, I'm going to suggest that he can see me. I don't know what that means. He asked me one time if I believed in God, and I said, I don't know. Do you? And he said to me, because he feels things so deeply and he knows that I do as well, he said he wasn't sure, but he liked to think that he was part of something bigger. Yeah. And the reason he wants to believe that, or wanted to believe that, and wanted hopefully that for me, is that when you feel things so strongly, and fear being one of them, things like death aren't as scary anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
I don't know if you believe in this stuff, but my painting just fell when you started talking about your dad at the top of this podcast.
He's here. He's
Just
here.
saying. I don't know.
That's so cool.
It's those little things. I don't know. I like that stuff too.
you know, you got to have something. And I think, especially when you're struggling with all the feels, that's like so hard for me to say that. That's what people say now, right? The feels.
Totally, the feels.
Okay, the feels. I don't want to believe that there's nothing beyond, right? Mm-hmm. I think for people with mental illness too, if you think in some spiritual way, whatever that looks like for you, smudge, I don't care, whatever you do, but there is a measure of comfort when everything else seems to be falling apart.
Yeah. And we'll get into that conversation in another podcast, but thanks again for sharing.
Thanks.
And
I look forward to us doing many, many more.
Woohoo! Smash the stigma. Thanks for listening. If you want to join the conversation, and we hope you do, come find us on Twitter and Facebook. And you can subscribe to us on iTunes and SoundCloud. That's it, Stigma Fighters. And remember, your story isn't over yet, and we want to hear it.